Welcome to the another chapter that is on simplex method, and we will extend our discussion to sensitivity analysis. This we will try to cover in 4 to 5 lectures. So in the previous chapter where we have made LP modeling in which we have written the objective function and constraint. So the problem which is having more than 2 variables, we cannot find a solution using graphical method. In order to solve such kind of a problem, we need one method. But in order to use that method, we have to first convert our LP model in the equation form. So when we say equation form, there are 2 requirements for it. First of all, without considering the variable non-negativity conditions, take other constraints, and all these constraints should have non-negative right hand side. Second is all the variable should be non-negative. Let me take the example. So first, we are going to convert the inequalities into the equation form with non-negative right hand side. Let me take the first case as it is written 6x1 plus 4x2 smaller than equals to 24. Now, as we can understand that left hand side can be smaller than and or equal to 24. So in order to make a balance between left hand side and the right hand side, we are adding a slack variable, say S1. This slack variable says that if left hand side is smaller than right hand side, then this slack variable will become non-zero. And we have on the right hand side 24. When we are adding this particular slack variable, we should make sure that the slack variable should be non-negative. So S1 should be greater than or equals to 0 is a non-negativity condition. Let me take another constraint, which is written as x1 plus x2 greater than equal to 800. Now this sign is different from the smaller than sign. Now it says that the left hand side could be greater than or equal to 800, meaning that if I have x1 plus x2, and if we introduce a variable, say capital S1, and we are subtracting it, so the surplus amount, and I'm subtracting something, then it will equal to 800. And this surplus variable should be greater than 0. So the difference between slack variable and surplus variable you can see based on the constraint type. So it is a smaller than type, so we are adding a slack variable. When it is greater than type, then we are subtracting the variable. And in both the equation, the right hand side is non-negative, means it is it can be 0 or it should be greater than 0. Now let me take another case which is with respect to the non-negative right hand side. Now here the equation is given as minus x1 plus x2 smaller than equal to minus 3. Since it is smaller than equal to, then we know that we are going to add a slack variable. So this will become minus x1 plus x2. Now we are adding a slack variable equal to minus 3. And this slack variable is greater than 0. Now currently the right hand side is minus 3, which is negative. And one of the condition is that we should have the non-negative right hand side. So what we will do is we will multiply minus 1 here. This will give me x1 minus x2 minus times of s1 equal to 3. So we get a non-negative. And the slack variable which we had earlier, which we added, now it becomes minus time. So what we can understand that the slack and surplus variable, both of them are of the same type. Based on the constraint, if the constraint is smaller than type having non-negative right hand side, then we are adding a slack variable. When we have constraint greater than type and non-negative right hand side, we are subtracting the similar kind of variable, which we call at sometimes slack variable or sometimes surplus variable. There could be other kind of variable which is called unrestricted variable. Unrestricted variable means it can take negative value, it can take positive value. And we understand that the second condition for LP model in an equation form that all variables should be non-negative. Now, since unrestricted variable can take negative or a positive, so we are going to write this unrestricted variable. So we are representing as I plus 1. So I plus 1 is a subscript. We are writing this variable in terms of two different variables and one variable y minus times of variable y plus. Now here, these two variables are non-negative. So our condition of all the variables should be non-negative is satisfied. Now, based on the value of plus and a minus y, our yi can take either positive or negative or a zero value. So it means it is unrestricted. So what we are going to do is we will take this variable, then we convert this variable into two variable as given here. And in all the equations, wherever this unrestricted variable is given, those unrestricted variables should be represented by the other two variables. Now let us take an example. Here we are taking a two variable problem for simplicity. We want to maximize our function as given. Subjected to, we have two constraints and we have a non-negative variables. Now let us write the equation form. So since it is smaller than type and right hand side is non-negative, so we know that we are going to add a slack variable. Similarly, for the second equation, since it is smaller than or equals to 0, we are again adding another slack variable. So S1 and S2, two different slack variables are added in equation 1 and 2 respectively. Now when we are converting these constraints into the equation form, what we can see that earlier we have number of variables 2. As you can see, this is our original problem. We have two variable x1 and x2, which you can see here. But as soon as we have included the slack variable here, the number of variables is increased to 4. So x1, x2, s1, s2, all of them should be greater than 0. So now we have 4 variables. So and how many equations? We have two equation in constraints. So if we are going to write in terms of say variable here, so m always represent number of equations. So m is equals to 2 equations and small n always represent number of variables. So in the current example, we have 4 variables. Now, since we know that the optimum solution for a given LP problem should always be a corner point, this we can find by putting n minus 1 variable. So 4 minus 2 equal to 2 variables 0. So in this case, the number of variables which is n minus m, we always keep them 0. I will discuss this more in detail. Let us transform the graphical solution to the algebraic solution. The equation which was given in the previous slide, we are using the same equation and we have drawn on the right hand side. Here, different corner points are represented as A, B, C till F. Now, here we are writing two types of variables. One is called basic variable, another is called non-basic variables. So the basic variable is equals to m. What do you mean by that? We know that m represent the number of equation. So the basic variable will be always equal to the number of equation in the LP model. What is non-basic variable? After adding the slack surplus variables, the total number of variable we get n, and n minus m will become the non-basic variable. Here, if we look at the figure on the right hand side, let us take a point where x1 and x2 both are 0. So this is corresponding to the point A, which is a origin. When we are putting x1 and x2 0, look at the constraint equation 1. When we are putting x1 equals to 0 and x2 equals to 0, so the value of s1 will become 4. So it is represented here. Similarly, when x1 and x2 are 0, s2 will become 5. So we know that as per the graph given on the right hand side, x1 and x2 equals to 0 is the origin, which is corresponding to the point A as mentioned here. Now let us take a point where s1 and s2 are 0, meaning that if I'm going to put s1 and s2 equals to 0, so I get two equations, two variable. I can find the point of intersection. That point of intersection is corresponding to x1 equal to 1, x2 equals to 2, which is the point represented by C here. Now, let us take these points one by one. Now, if we take, say, point A, now we know that x1 and x2 are 0. As per our previous discussion, we understand that the non-basic variables, we are keeping them 0. So since x1 and x2, we are taking them as non-basic, so they are basically 0, 0. They are 0, 0 means it is representing a point A. So since in this particular example, the number of equation is 2, number of variable is 4, n minus 1, n minus m equal to 2 means we have two number of non-basic variable. So two non-basic variables are given. The remaining two variables that are s1 and s2 will become basic variable. And we know earlier how we found the value of s1 and s2. So the same 4 and a 5 value, we can get it. This is corresponding to a solution A. So we have written a corner point A. Is this feasible? Looking at the graph and looking at the shaded region, we can say, yes, it is feasible because both the constraints are satisfied. What is the objective function value? If I go back here, if I put a value of x1 equals to 0, x2 equals to 0, z value will become 0. So that's why we have written 0. Now let us take another pair of non-basic, which is x1 and s1. So x1 and s1 are 0. We are taking x2 and s2 as non-basic. So again, we are taking x1 and s1 as non-basic, means both of them are 0. x2 and s2 as basic, so they are non-zero values, so some values are there. Now look at the graph. Now x1 and s1 should be 0. So I know that if I am moving along the y-axis, so I know that the value of x1 will always be 0. So either this point will be B or this point will be F. So it depends on where this S1 is 0. So when you are going to put x1 and s1 0, so x2 will become 4. Now we know that x2 equals to 4 is corresponding to the solution number F. So this is also a corner point. Yes. Now, is it feasible? So looking at the graph, we know it is not feasible. If we want to see, then we have x2 and s2 variable as 4 and minus 3. Now you know that our variable should be non-negative. it is, you can see S2 is -3, so it is not going to be a feasible solution. Since it is not a feasible solution, so we are not finding the objective function because it has no role. Now let us take another combination that x1 and s2 are non-basic, means both of them are 0. So in that case, x2 and s1 will become basic variable. Now let us go here. X1 is 0, s2 is 0. So x2 will become 5 by 2, which is 2.5. So we know that this is corresponding to the point B. We can calculate x2, s1 as 2.5 and 1.5. It is corresponding to the corner point B. Is it feasible? Looking at the figure, yes. Otherwise, we can put the value here and we can find, yes, it is feasible. And what is the corresponding value of objective function? So when we have to calculate the objective function, we have to find what is x1, 0, because it is non-basic. What is x2, 2.5. So this value we can put and we can get a value of z. Similarly, I can have the other combination of x2 and s1 as a non-basic. This solution is corresponding to solution number D. Since it is feasible, we calculated the objective function 4. Then we have x2 and s2. So this x2 and s2 is corresponding to a solution E. When we find the basic solution x1 and s1, you can see this is -6, meaning that it is not a feasible solution. We are not going to calculate any objective function. Then let us put s1 and s2 equals to 0. When we are putting 0 means these are non-basic, so the remaining variables are basic. Then we can calculate the value of x1 and x2, 1 and a 2. This is corresponding to a solution C, and it is feasible, yes. And the F objective is 8. So what we did here is different combination of basic and non-basic variables. We try to find out all corner points. So the all corner points given in this figure, we got all of them. And among them, when I'm comparing, I get to know that the solution C is the optimum for the given maximization problem. So here what we found is that in this particular way, when I am moving from one corner point to the another corner point, I will be calculating the objective function and then finally I am finding the optimum solution. For any problem which has m number of variables, we have m number of equations, n number of variables. This could be the maximum number of corner points. If we take, say, m equal to 10, n equal to 20, so very large number of corner points can be seen here. So this means that if for a given problem, if I'm going to calculate the number of corner point, it can be a very large number depending on how many equations we have and how many variables after adding slack and surplus variable. So in this case, rather than we calculate all the corner point, what simplex method does, so this simplex method investigates selectively few corner points and locate the optima. And this is what we want. So let us take a ready mix problem here. In this small window, the problem ready mix problem, which we have discussed in the previous chapter, we have written as a maximization function subjected to 4 constraints and non-negativity condition. So first, let us convert our constraint into the equation form. In this case, it is smaller than type. We are adding a slack variable as 1. Then equation number 2, again it is smaller than type. We are adding another slack variable as 2. Then then again the third equation is smaller than equal to type. We are adding a third slack variable. And finally, again, it is a smaller than equal to 2. We are adding another slack variable. So we have written all the four equation in the equation form, all four constraints, and the number of variable which were initially only x1 and x2, as you can see at the bottom here. Now it will become 6. So we have x1, s1, and from s1 to s4. Since we have included the slack variable, now I'm rewriting my objective function as maximization of a z equals to 5x1 plus 4x2 plus 0s1, 0s2. So I am including the slack variable in the objective function, and we know the coefficient which is multiplied by s1 is 0. So that's why they have no contribution. We are rewriting this objective function. What we are doing is we are taking this equation on the left hand side. So z minus 5x1 minus 4x2 equal to 0. It is non-negative. Yes. So both the requirements are satisfied when we are converting our LP model into the equation form. This rewriting the objective function has a significance we will discuss in the later slides. Now let us draw a table. This table we have drawn, as we can see that in the very first row, we are mentioning that basic. So here we will be writing all the basic variables. The column 2 is corresponding to Z. Then we are writing the columns based on the number of variables. So we remember that, as we can see at the bottom, we had 6 number of variables. So I'm writing as x1, x2, s1, s2, s3, and s4. Now let us fill this table with the coefficients here. Now we have rewritten this objective function in the previous slide. So let us write the coefficient now. So the first row, the second row here is corresponding to Z row, which is equals to, now what is the coefficient here? Z1. Coefficient of x1 minus 5. Coefficient of x2 minus 4. And the coefficient of s1, s2, s3, s4 are 0. What is the right hand side of this equation? 0. So that's why we have written 0 on the column which is corresponding to the solution. Now let us take the first equation. Now we are taking s1 as a basic variable. So I will discuss how we are taking the basic and non-basic variable, how to decide it. Let us assume that we are taking s1 as a basic variable. Now let us write the coefficient. So looking at this equation, there is no z, so the coefficient is 0. What is the coefficient of x1? So it is 6. Coefficient of x2, 4. Coefficient of s1, 1. S2, S3, S4, there is nothing, so it is 0. What is the right hand side? 24. So that's why I have written in the column called solution 24. I can do the same thing for the second constraint equation. So the coefficient of Z is 0. Then x1 is 1. X2, the coefficient is 2, so 2. There is no S1, so it is 0. S2 is 1 and rest of them are 0. And the right hand side is 6, so we have written 6. If I'm following the same, I can fill the table with respect to the coefficients given in the equation form. Now the question is, for the given problem, we know there are 4 equations and 6 variables, meaning that we are going to have 4 number of basic variables and n minus m will become 2. So basically 2 number of non-basic. So 4 number of basic variable and 2 number of non-basic variable. Now among the set as given at the bottom, how we can decide that which should be basic and which should be non-basic at the beginning? So first thumb rule is look at the constraint equation number 1. Here, what we have done is we have included one extra variable, which is S1. So let me take this as a basic variable for the equation number 1. Now let me go to the equation number 2. Let me take S2, which is the extra, similarly S3 and S4. So once we decide that yes, from each equation, we are going to take one variable, that is the extra variable which we have included into the problem. So let us start that. Why I'm starting? Why? Because if I'm taking S1, S2, S3 and S4 as basic variable, so meaning that X1 and X2 will become non-basic. Non-basic means it should be 0. It should be 0 means it's a origin. So we are starting from a point origin where X1 and X2 are 0 and all additional variables are non-zero, which are the basic variable. So the first thumb rule is take equation 1, see if we have added any extra variable to it. If yes, take that variable as a basic variable. Then go to equation number 2. Then again do the same operation for rest of them. Here you have to note down that when you are picking a equation number 1, you will be taking one variable only as a basic variable from that equation. Now with this explanation, we can write S1, S2, S3, S4 as our basic solution at the beginning. Now, some observation. I have shown you this particular coefficient in a different color. Why? If you look at these coefficient of basic variable, which are S1, S2, S3 and S4, you will see that these are the coefficients corresponding to the identity matrix. Now identity matrix. Now let me remind you that we have done this linear algebra. When we have a system of linear equations such as Ax equals to B, if we have to find a solution of it, we can use Gauss elimination method and we can use other methods. In one of the methods, what we do is we have a matrix A, which is a coefficient matrix, and we also have a matrix I. So we are going to get an augmented matrix. And what we do is we perform row operations such that the vector matrix A will become identity matrix and the I matrix will become B matrix, and we have a right hand side. So you remember this. So I'm not discussing that in a detail. I'm telling you that the simplex method is nothing but a linear algebra where we are trying to find out the solution for a system of linear equations. In this one, we are taking the method in which we have A is a coefficient matrix, I is the identity matrix, and B is a vector, which is the right hand side vector. We perform row operations in such a way that A should be converted into the I matrix, right? So this is exactly we are following here. So this identity matrix I will discuss at the last again. Now, since we have identified, yes, S1, S2, S3 are going to be the basic variable. X1, X2 will become non-basic, so their value will become 0. And by putting X1, X2, 0, I can find out what is the value of S1, S2, S3 and S4, which are 24, 6, 1 and a 2. If you look at these coefficient, can I find the same coefficient? Yes. Look at the column corresponding to the solution. If I'm writing Z equals to Z is 0, this means this is our objective function at the current point when X1 and X2 are 0 because they are non-basic. What is the value of S1 corresponding to the solution column 24, S2 6, S3 1 and S4 2. Now let us follow the simplex method rules. In this one, we first identify entering non-basic variable. This means in the given table, the one non-basic variable will be coming into the basic. Let us see how. In the current situation, we know that x1 and x2 are the non-basic variable. So which should come into the basic? So the variable which is having a most negative coefficient for maximization problem. So this you have to remember. I'm talking this particular condition with respect to the maximization problem. So most negative condition means that if I look at the Z row here and if I have to look only the coefficient of non-basic variable, which is x1 and x2. So I know that -5 is most negative. So x1 should become the entering non-basic variable. The condition which I have just discussed is called as optimality condition. Once it is done, we will be saying that all the coefficient which are corresponding to x1, that we are going to use it in the later slide. And this entering variable will become x1 for the current problem. The second step is we have to find out leaving. Why? Because if this x1 is coming here, then one of them should leave, then only x1 will get a place. How we can find? We are going to find the minimum non-negative ratio of the right hand side of the equation to the corresponding constraint coefficient under the entering variable. So this is, we know x1 is the entering variable. Their corresponding coefficients are given here. And what is the right hand side? You remember that the right hand side is written with respect to the solution. So what we are looking, entering variable x1, these are the column coefficient. This is the solution, which is right hand side. These are the coefficient. Now let us find the ratio. Ratio means 24 divided by 6, 6 divided by 1, 1 divided by -1, 2 divided by 0. So I have written here. Here, when I find a ratio, I get 4, 6. This is minus. I will not consider because it says that minimum non-negative ratio. Fine. And then 2, it is already an infinite value, so we are not going to take it. What is the minimum non-negative ratio here? Minimum non-negative ratio is corresponding to S1, meaning that the leaving variable is S1. So, and in the current iteration, what we found that X1 is going to enter and S1 is going to leave. So the basic variable will become, so what we are going to do, since S1 is leaving, so in place of S1, we will take X1 here. So the basic variable set is now X1 is X1, S2, S3, S4, and what is non-basic now? S1 and X2. Now, if you look at this particular figure on the right hand side, so in the previous iteration, you remember that we kept it X1 and X2 0. So we started at the origin. Now, since the X1 is going to be basic, means X1 will be changing. So I will be moving in this particular line and I'm expecting that I should get a point B. Let us see. Now, what the operations which we have done, we have identified the entering variable X1. We have identified leaving variable S1. So the column corresponding to the entering variable is called pivot column, and the row corresponding to the leaving variable is called pivot row. And the common element of pivot row and column is the 6, which we refer as a pivot element. So pivot column, pivot row, and pivot element have a significance when we are going to perform the next operation. So what is the next operation? Next operation is the Gauss-Jordan row operation. So Gauss-Jordan row operation, the first step is we have to find out pivot row. So the one pivot row we know. Replace the leaving variable in the basic column with the entering variable. So now you can see we have replaced. So now we have X1. What is new pivot row? So I'm talking about only pivot row. So current pivot row divided by pivot element. So pivot element is 6. So I have written here. So what I'm going to do is this 6, I will be dividing each and every coefficient here. So let me divide. So 6 divided by 6, it will become 1. Then this is 0. This is 2 by 3. This is 1 by 6. These are 0 and this is 4. Let me show you again. 4 by 6, 1 by 6, 24 by 6. So I can get these coefficient. So this is the first operation which we do under Gauss-Jordan. Now coming to the second operation. Second operation says that we have to find for all other rows including Z. Now what is new row? The current row minus its pivot column coefficient multiplied by the new pivot row. What is that? Let us go one by one. Before we start, make sure that the X1, the coefficient under X1, all of them have been changed in the previous slide. And the same coefficient I am writing here. Now let us take the Z row. So Z row, so the first coefficient I have written. So this is corresponding to the coefficient here. Now look at this. 1, minus 5, minus 4, 0, 0, 0, 0. All the coefficients are written in the same sequence. Now what is pivot column coefficient of a Z? Of Z is minus 5. So that's why it is minus 5. What is new pivot row coefficient? So since this is the X1 is the new row, we are taking all these coefficient. You can make it out. I have written the same coefficient. If I perform this operation here, I can get a new Z row as given at the bottom. I can do the same thing for the another row, say S2. Now S2 is given. So these coefficient, as you can see, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 6, all coefficient are written. What is pivot column coefficient? 1. So corresponding to S2, the pivot column coefficient is 1. And new pivot row coefficient that will remain the same as in the previous slide. I can put this thing in our formula and I can get the new S2 row. Similarly, I can find for S3 as well, identifying the pivot column and then new pivot row coefficient, and then I can find the new row S2. I'm doing it quickly because we have understood how these operations have been done. My suggestion is you have to do by hand calculation because most of the time, almost 70 to 75% of a student, they did mistake while performing this particular calculation. Now coming to the last row. So we have S4 column coefficient 0, and we have the new pivot row coefficient, and then we have the new S4. So it should not be S3, this should be S4. So by this time, our first iteration is over. So what we did is we find the entering variable as X1. We found S1 as a leaving variable. Then we change the row corresponding to X1. And then we change the coefficient of row Z1, Z, S2, S3, and S4. So these are the changed coefficient. Now, since the iteration number 1 is over, now we have to check, is there any entering variable? Means, is there any most negative coefficient? Yes, again, there is a most negative coefficient corresponding to non-basic variable is minus 2 by 3. So this is going to enter. Since we have find out what is entering variable, I can find the solution. So this is the column I'm looking into it. Then I will be finding the ratio. So how I will be finding 4 divided by 2 by 3, 2 divided by 4 by 3, 5 divided by 5 by 3, and 2 divided by 1. So I get the ratio now. Once I get the ratio, I have to look for the minimum non-negative ratio. This is 3 by 2 as of now, and this is corresponding to S2. So pivot column is X2, pivot row is corresponding to S2. So here, what you can see that we started from point A, now we are on a B, and we will be moving along this red line while identifying X2 as a non-base, X2 as an entering variable, and S2 as a leaving variable. Now quickly I'm showing you the Gauss-Jordan row operations. So first we will be doing the pivot row operation, which is divided by 4 by 3. As you can see that the pivot element in the current table is 4 by 3. Then we will be performing rest of the operations for Z row, X1 row, S3 row, and S4 row, and we get this table. Now once it is done, second iteration is over. Now I have to look, is there any non-negative coefficient? So S1 and S2 are the non-basic variable. Both of them are positive, so there is no negative coefficient, meaning that I have to stop it. Since there is nothing to enter, we have to stop it. Once we stop it, so I can see what is the Z value, 21. So this is going to be the optimum solution. What is the value of X1? Looking at the last 3. What is the value of X2? Looking at the last 3 by 2. And similarly, S3 and S4 values are given. So the decision variable X1, X2, optimum values and Z value are given. So you remember that when we solved the ready mix problem using graphical method, we got the same solution as we found by the simplex method. Second observation is, look at the coefficient under basic variables. What are basic variable? X1, X2, S3 and S4. So this is X1, this is X2, this is S3 and S4. Do we get identity matrix? Yes. So it says that under the basic variables, the coefficient, the column coefficients are always corresponding to the identity matrix, and it is a very important property. Now in the previous slide, we discussed about the solution. Now when we get the value of S1, S2, S3 and S4, it has also some significance. Now S1 and S2, both of them were non-basic, so that are 0. This means that if they are going to be 0, so we know that left hand side equal to right hand side, means we can say these are the two material which are scarce in nature. Looking at the other two variables S3 and S4, they are positive. So we can say that they are abundant. Why? Because our left hand side is actually smaller than the right hand side, and that's why the slack variable has a positive value. Now I'm coming to the simplex method to revise, to again recap the same thing. We have two conditions. One is called optimality condition. So optimality condition. So just now we have solved a maximization problem. For a maximization problem, we look for the most negative coefficient of non-basic variable in the Z row. So I have not written Z row, so we know that we look into the Z row. But if I'm solving a minimization problem, then I will be looking for most positive coefficient of non-basic variable in Z row. So please make sure that what kind of problem you are solving, and accordingly your optimality condition will change. Look at the feasibility condition. Feasibility condition means we will be look for the smallest non-negative ratio. That will remain the same for both the problems, both type of problem, whether maximization or minimization, both of them are the same. Gauss-Jordan row operation, that remain the same for whether it is maximization or minimization, it doesn't matter. So what are the steps involved in simplex method? So the steps is we have to start with the basic feasible solution. So the basic solution we have identified, all of them should be feasible. Thereafter, we find which is the variable which is going to be entered using optimality condition. If suppose there is no entering variable, means we already got the optimum solution. So we should stop. Otherwise, we will go to step 3. Otherwise means that yes, there is a negative, there is an entering variable. If there is an entering variable, then we will look for the leaving variable using feasibility condition. Minimum non-negative ratio we calculate. And then in step 4, we determine the new basic solution by using Gauss-Jordan computation. Here, the important point is we have to find the starting basic feasible solution. In the given problem, we took x1 and x2 as a non-basic, meaning 0, 0, and rest of the variables as non-basic. And when we calculate the value of S1, S2, S3, and 4, all of them were non-negative. So we can start with that particular solution. So before I conclude this particular session, now let me show you the geometrical significance here. Now here, you remember that in the very first iteration, we started at the origin. Why? Because x1 and x2 was 0. Then in the second iteration, x1 entered into the table means it is going to be the basic variable. So we move from point A to point B. Now you may be wondering what is the significance of the feasibility condition? So if I go back again, let me show you the feasibility condition here. Right now. So we started with the origin A. Now, afterwards, we find x1 is going to enter, meaning that we have to move along x1 axis. Then only x1 will become non-zero. Now, the point is that if I'm moving in the x1 axis, I can take point B, or I can take the point which is at this particular point, which is 6 to 0. So what is the feasibility condition says that here, if I'm finding the ratio, so finding the ratio means I'm finding 4. So this means I'm moving here. So if I'm moving along x1, why? Because x1 is the entering variable. So I get a first ratio 4, which is corresponding to solution number B. So this is the intersection of line B with x1 axis. I'm again repeating, since we found that x1 is going to be an entering variable, we will take equation number 1. This is constraint 1. We will find what is the point of intersection of equation 1 with x1 axis. Why? Because it is the entering variable right now. So I get a point B. Now look at the ratio 4. So I get 4. Now equation number 2, look at visually. Now equation number 2 is this one. And when I get a ratio, it gives me 6, meaning that point of intersection of constraint equation 2 with x1 axis. Why? Because x1 is the entering variable. So I get 6. Now look at the equation number 3. If I extend this equation, it will be intersecting on the negative side of x1 axis. So I get -1. And then the fourth equation. Now you see that fourth equation is parallel to x1 axis. Since both of them are parallel, there will be no point of intersection. That's why it was infinite. So when I get all these points, so I know that the -1 we cannot take it because it is already infeasible. 2, 0, both of them are parallel. So that's why there will be no point of intersection. Now I am left with these two. What we mean by that here? If I'm saying minimum non-negative ratio, meaning that I'm looking for the nearest point of intersection if I'm moving from A along the direction of entering variable, that is x1. So minimum non-negative ratio says that what is the nearest point of intersection of entering variable with the constraints. So we get 0.4, and that's why we are saying that we should take S1 as our leaving variable. Why we cannot take 6? Why? Because at 6 we cannot make sure that the point is feasible. But I know that if I'm going to take a point which is nearest to the point A, it is going to be always feasible. So that's why I'm taking point number B. So that is the justification that the optimality condition says that should I go along x1 axis or x2 axis? Minus most negative for a current problem says that move in x1 because your objective function will improve maximally. That is the first reason for optimality condition. What is the significance of the feasibility condition? If I'm moving along x1 axis, what is the nearest point of intersection with the constraint? That constraint can be anyone. In the present example, the constraint is 1, and that we have taken as a leaving variable. So with this understanding of the simplex method, optimality condition, feasibility condition, and the Gauss-Jordan row operation, I'm concluding the session on simplex method.